because we are at time, and Paul said he'd be joining. Paul's running a little late.
So you know how I've been trying to rethink the way I feel about synchronicity and serendipity and stuff. This morning I have been kind of joking about a friend who works at an institution that I have renewed interest in because they just hired a football coach that means a lot to me because my dog is named after him. Like, I don't really care about football that much, but my dog is named after Lincoln Riley, who just went from the University of Oklahoma to USC. And I've been joking about, well, I'm either gonna have to rename him or maybe get a job out there. And so I had been texting with a friend about another friend of mine who has a really high position out there. And he texted me like 5 minutes later and said, hey, I've got this job I really want you to think about. It's a short-term gig of like 2 to 3 years, starting just before the summer. And I'm like, does that meet all the possible things that are on my list of what I want to do next? I was like, call me. And he goes, can you talk? I'm like, call me right now. That is absolutely bonkers. Like, just that it fit all the boxes. I was like, okay, and now I don't have to rename my dog, maybe, if I decide to.
It's amazing.
We just talked about that yesterday, renaming Lincoln.
Yep, Lincoln Riley. So I don't know that it's all going to work out, but there's a really strong possibility, and at least it feels like it is something I would want to do. I don't know that I would want to live in Southern California forever, but I would do it for 2 to 3 years. And I might find out I do.
I'd like you to go there so I can visit.
That's exactly what I knew you would say. So it's interesting. It's a new position that isn't created yet. So there's a whole lot of what ifs and maybes and stuff, but I was just like, this is what they were talking about. Like when all your worlds kind of do come together.
Oh, that's so fun. And Samantha, how are you? Are you still there?
Here, I'm just laptop malfunctioning and 1 second.
I should have known better to call on you when you're in transition.
I was actually just getting the charger and I was like, it's gonna die soon. My week has been interesting, actually. I think it's better than last week. Okay, so it's better than last week. And I think I was definitely less tired and wrote a bit. But I think this week, certain things were not coming together for me in terms of what the writing means to me. And and I had a conversation with Sean about less than an hour ago about how I can start using that and sharing that more widely, but not in a way that then put pressure on me to kind of do it consistently. And then I think Sean just mentioned just getting over that fear of just like the first draft and just send it out. So I think that's, yeah, it's been a good week, I think, for me. Yeah.
Good. Do we want to write about synchronicities or share about synchronicities? If any of those happened for people, besides Leslie's amazing, I'm gonna maybe be going to Southern California for 2 or 3 years. I had one that was surprising. I scheduled an interview with one of my old friends, and I did that interview, and she found an old notebook. In the interview, she said that she found an old notebook from some advice that she had gotten from a teacher that we both shared that I had been thinking about. Her name's Marion Codron. She does medical qigong and Buddhist philosophy. She got her PhD in early Indian Buddhism, skillful means. Super fascinating educational thing. So I was already thinking about her and Marion Codron and wondering, and then I'm in this interview and she's like, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about Marion Codron the last 2 weeks. And I'm like, that's crazy. So have I. And then we started talking about teaching and what stands out to us about teachers, which was crazy. But she said this, and I think this is so what I wrote about this morning when I was thinking about what was most synchronous this week. Corey, my friend, didn't know what she was doing with her life as an undergrad student. Most undergrad students don't. She's like, I don't know what I want to do. And Marion's advice to her was, You need to start writing down every day what's going on in your head, even if it's just a little bit. So just start writing down what's going on. This is not to share with anybody. It's just to write down what's going on. Just put it on paper, even if it's just a little bit each day. Second, I want you to list your top 5 values. What are the 5 things you care about the most? And here's some resources to help you do that. Third, what are your gifts and talents that you might be able to use to help bring those values into the world? That's what I would think about. Then she didn't say, well, I would add there's a 4th one. It's just getting curious about how that might work out. Who could help you? Where might you do it? Who might you want to talk to? What other interviews might you want to schedule? So I just found that was so interesting. It was like, okay, that is exactly what, like, that is the framework. Write down every day and write down what's going on just a little bit so you can see as a tool of self-study. Identify your top 5 values. Identify your gifts and talents that you naturally have, that you enjoy, like your sense of play, if you will, and then put them to work in bringing those values into the world. And then just leave the rest to... So that was fascinating to me. It was like, holy shit, not only are we both thinking about the same old teacher that we had, you brought this thing to the conversation that is like what I've been doing in a different kind of way. And it also just reminded me on a different kind of more personal, emotional note. Marion was just super dedicated to her students in like an over-the-top committed kind of way. And it just, I feel like it's easy for me to get lost in metrics of success that aren't as important as the one that really matters to me, which is being a good person. And to like be willing to like go the extra mile for people that come to me asking for help. Because Marion did that over and over again in so many ways. She was teaching weekend classes on her own. She was charging $40 for 4 classes. So $10 per class. It's just like, the woman was not out to make money. She was out to relieve the suffering of all sentient beings. And I was just like, that is so freaking rad. So anyway, that was my inspirational, like, talking to someone that reminded me of someone else that I had been thinking about. And then thinking about who that person was made me really, like, reassess success and be like, right, success is less about these other things and more about, like, being this kind of a person and paying it forward. She was a badass teacher. That was kind of a long one, but that's something that happened for me this week. Surprising.
Sean, the other thing that I loved in that conversation that you had with Corey was when she said she found her first notebook and she had written down all the instructions for what to do, and the rest of the notebook was blank. I just loved that so much. I wish I would have known Corey back in those days.
Sean, where is that posted? Leslie literally was talking about it last night to us.
It's on the YouTube.
YouTube. Okay.
It's on the Wisdom Workshop YouTube. She gave a talk on feminist friendship. She also has a fun talk on anal bombs. She's a fun philosopher.
Anal what? Bombs.
It's an Ignite talk on the anal bomb.
An anal bomb.
Yeah, well, you just have to see it. She's basically
Nothing to do
like,
with anal beads.
It's her tool to destabilize gender hierarchies around sexual performance. So that she gets talking about like whether or not, she asks guys if they like anal, and the assumption is that they're talking about whether or not they like to give anal. And she says, then they have that conversation, and then she flips it so that they're actually talking about themselves. So why is it an assumption that it's the females that are taking it when we talk about, so that's she drops the anal bombs. Like, actually, I thought we were talking about your ass, not mine. And why is there an assumption that we're actually talking about my ass when we talk about this? So she uses that as an example to surface gender inequality in sexual spaces and in like culture in general. And it's like a fun 3-minute talk. Like anyway.
I love that this is in a recording that's in the first 15 minutes of our class.
Yeah. Paul. Hi, Paul. It's terrible. Yeah, that was good. The There's a lot. I mean, it's the other thing I'm thinking that I did it. I opened up a room on Synchronicity the other day on Clubhouse to be to just kind of do some in-person research and to expand on that. So I have some cool notes from that for us on how we can, like, just things we can do to expand more synchronicities. I got some cool stories and what to do there. So we can do some of that, but I've been talking far long enough. Maybe.
I like too, Sean, what you've said before about kind of this vessel and how it just kind of is like a synchronicity accelerator.
Yes.
And I think with even just with how different that Leslie's talking about it this week from last week, I mean, I think it's just a space where it's like where we're paying more attention, and so we see more of it, and like you said, it just feels like an accelerator, whether I'm imagining it or not.
No, and I think that's really the interesting question. Is that whether or not you're imagining it or not is part of what it is. Like you're making meaning out of these things. But what came out of basically what you were doing, and there was an interesting psychologist that joined the call who is way more studied in psychological systems, Dr. Elizabeth Bailey. But she said that there's basically two things. You're playing with your environment and your expectations, to make it really simple. And that if you change your environment, if you introduce new environments, you increase, that's an accelerator. So this is a vessel of acceleration because each of us are kind of bringing our own little environment into the meeting and our experience. But then the other thing is, like, having expectations, I always see as kind of a negative thing, because expectations get in the way of you being in the moment, man. And she's like, no. Well, maybe, but really, if you expect for things to happen, you start paying attention for them. So I can go into a situation, I'm expecting something synchronous to happen. And now, when this happens, I'm like, aha, I knew it. Putting it in the aha journal. So that you're modifying your expectations. So you basically, and she's like, it's cliche, but you should expect the unexpected. And I'm like, oh, right. Then I'm not like, my expectations aren't getting in the way. They're allowing me to enter into what's happening with more attention, which is the goal from last week. And I get. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Having a synchronous moment. However you say. Basically, this weekend as well, I was in a conversation, and it was about relationships, and whether something is was choosing between two things. I can't remember what it was. It was the difference between a companionship or something like that, compatible and suitable. And then there was a coach who said, if you stick out your thumb, right, and you look at if you have like this in front of you, and you look at your nail, you see everything around it becomes blurred. So cool. When you go into situations, you shouldn't go into them looking for, I don't want this to happen. Because if you don't want something to happen, like you mentioned, that's what you're going to be looking out for. And then you blur out everything else. So it's about changing how we say things, like, not I don't want this to happen, is I'm not looking for a place where I am respected, blah, 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 rather than looking out for signs of disrespect. And he said, like, we need to change what we're looking at as the nail and make sure we're focusing on the right thing. So it's just so in tune with what you just said.
So much. Which someone else said that when we talk about attention, there's actually 3 different types or flavors of attention. One is a focused attention, where I'm focused on this one thing. I love that image because I'm focused on the thumbnail and everything else gets blurry. That's focused attention. Then what did he say? A sorting attention, where we're connecting different things. I'm like, this connects with this. It's kind of like a logical attention. And then just an open, diffuse attention, where now I'm like, actually, like, I'm noticing instead of the Zoom screen that there's these other things going on outside in our unseasonably warm pre-winter here in Colorado or whatever it is. So, and there's a toggling between, like, I'm taking into account all this stuff, but I'm also looking for these points. And I think Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Super interesting. I did want to ask another pointed question on, did we have any experiences about playing with our attention? So attention or expectations, did we get a chance to experiment with using our attention in different ways, or having some kind of did we practice using our attention outside of class? Does that question make sense?
I would say yes. Oh, go ahead, Candace.
I was gonna say, I've been struggling this last week with like people pulling at my attention and like saying, hey, I need more of yours. And I've been trying to pay attention to how little boundaries I have around my attention and where I give it. And so I'm dealing with how to set better boundaries around who gets to pull at my attention and use it for themselves.
And I've just really, when? If you can set times where you're like, I'm in, now you can pull my attention. Or these 30 minutes, I'm actually going to make myself unpull attentionable somehow. And during that 30 minutes, I'm going to listen to a clubhouse room. Or I'm going to go on a walk, and I'm going to attend to my feet. Because I think that the follow-up question, if we want to take this last week's exercise, every single one of these weeks could be expanded into literally like a lifelong course, especially when we're talking about attention. So if we're playing with how can we use our attention better, what we want to think about is our environment. So what times, where are we, and what are the features of our environment that we can play with? This is going to connect with some of the design work we're doing this week and next week. But when you're thinking about, again, we geeked out about this as a vessel or a container. But when you think about like a container for attention, you're thinking about a when is this happening? So you have like a time box. It's happening between 1 and 3 p.m. on Tuesday. Or it's happening between 7:55 and 8 o'clock for 5 minutes. You have a where. I'm going to be sitting at my couch. You have some kind of environmental factors. I don't know how to say this. There's a better way of putting this. Like I'm gonna have a coffee. I'm gonna have my favorite hat. I don't know what the fuck I'm saying, but you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm trying to say. Like I'm gonna create this container, and my favorite container is honestly conversations I have with other people. So as soon as Samantha said she wanted to schedule a call about her writing, I was like, oh my God, can we make it a Clubhouse call? And Samantha's like, no, I don't think we can. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. So I am like, that's one for me. As soon as I have a call on the books with someone, I'm like, okay, what's happening here? I'm going to really like show up and pay attention. Coffee, favorite hat. Great Zoom notes for posterity there. It's really good. Okay. Any other comments on the synchronicity thing? I hope no one beat themselves up over this. We practice some self-compassion around this.
I have a question for you. Oh, go ahead, Kyle.
An example that I have is well, I'll back up and say, I've really been thinking about in the last couple of weeks, longer than that, I suppose, just been thinking about the type of work that I want to do, right? And recognizing after a statewide call with all extension county and area directors, as we collectively described our jobs and the work that we do, I took that call from home and then I drove into work. And as I was driving into work, I literally just had one of those aha moments where I was like, I hate my job. and for a lot of reasons, but the main one being is from the very beginning, I realized that this position was going to be largely administrative, right? So that I would be doing a lot of administrative functions. And so then as I've been, crafting my resume and working on cover letters and just getting everything lined up to really move, push out into the world, who it is that I am and what it is that I want to do professionally, I had this moment where I'm like, I don't really like all this surface work. I want to go deep. I miss the days when I'm able to, dive into the literature and create a one-page proposal on, something that I'm working on. And it was a couple of days later that there was an NPR on Colorado Public Radio. It was about that very thing, and about how we have, it's so good for us to have, at least some portion of our work be that deep work, and we each have to define what it is we want that deep work to be, right? For some people, the administrative functions and approving timesheets is perhaps their deep work, but gosh, how important that is to not only do the surface work, which we all have to do, there's no getting around that, but also having a percentage of our work being deep. So that's what I've really been thinking about this, this past week, especially since our last session, is how do we collectively find ourselves in positions where we are able to thrive and do the deep work that we identify and want to do.
So good.
My question, Sean, is about synchronicity. What happens when you notice synchronicities, but you're missing the meaning making piece? Like you're like, oh, I noticed that, but I don't actually have a meaning to it. It doesn't often happen to me, but it did happen
It's a great question.
this week. And I'm just like, that's weird.
I feel like it's just an area to question. Like you can just open up that question, like you noticed it. What does it mean? Because so much of our meaning making is, it might also be an opportunity to like work on the story that we're telling. So, there is like the meaning that we make is connected to some kind of an identity story that we're telling, who we are, what we're doing. And if we're noticing something that's like, oh, there's a rabbit over there, that seems really important. Why?
Yeah.
What are rabbits about? I don't know, maybe I'll look up like rabbit totem animal. Or I'll like be on like a, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I was gonna say, Jeannie, sometimes I like to think of it as like, I think of it as like a little playful thing. Like, oh, okay, I see you. Just throwing that out there to make sure I'm paying attention, kind of thing. That's kind of how I see it. And I think of it as more of like a little tap on the shoulder, like, you paying attention? You watch it? Like, because if it's gonna be a bigger symbol, I want to make sure you're paying attention. Sometimes I just giggle and I'm like, of course, Leslie gave me a little unicorn because I was just talking to a girlfriend the other day about unicorns and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. So sometimes I just giggle at it and that's playful.
Love it.
For me, Jeannie, I think I have always been, I've even been sort of accused of being paying too much attention to what everything means. Yeah. Instead of just like, oh, cool, that was great.
That's just a rabbit, Paul. You don't have to figure out what it means.
A wabbit is just a wabbit. So yeah, when I thought of rabbit, I thought of, Winnie the Pooh. I mean, there's your mind mapping. But but the other thing is, on the other side of that, the synchronicity stuff for me which may be in part of response to you, Jeannie, is been another opportunity to ask myself what I believe in, and sort of like, what is it that, if synchronicity is a thing, what is it that causes it, right? And so for me, I've always been in one way or another a spiritual seeker, and so I'm always looking for, like, I love it when things are connected, or when I see how they're connected. And so just taking joy in the connection itself that is meaning
Yeah.
for me, for what that's worth.
Yeah. I like it all.
Looking awesome.
That kind of goes back to what I said last week too. Like, are we allowed to celebrate the connection instead of speculate it? Can we just celebrate it and be like, oh, yay, cool, groovy?
I was just thinking maybe it's also a case of redefining how big something needs to be in order for it to be signed a meaning. Because if we're always looking for the big thing, we miss out on the joy on all the small things that are around us. And I think we kind of connect to what we've been talking about over the last few weeks about not celebrating the steps along the way, and not just when you reach that goalpost. And it's amazing. Like I was reading something somewhere, I can't remember where, and it's like somebody said, I woke up and said, I am grateful that I'm breathing, that I woke up this morning, you know, that I was able to have food. And it's a case of all those little things are actually wins that we never actually take time to think about them. And we tend to be grateful for the bigger things and not the small things as well.
That reminds me of a distinction I heard today, that gratitude is about appreciating specific things. So, and that's a great practice. But gratefulness is just about appreciating life in general. And that gratefulness is greater, is what the researcher found. This was rooted in research. Because if we get used to just I'm grateful that this, grateful to this, grateful to this, if I can just be grateful for the fact that we get to exist at all, that generates a potentially more beneficial approach. Then it doesn't necessarily need to mean something. You just be like, oh, that's cool. Rabbits are neat. Maybe.
I have a larger, thought / question, and and it does tie back to what I mentioned earlier about me not liking a lot of that surface work, because I feel like it's this task, this task, this task, and it's just very, very scattered. Expand that out into our larger, wider world. This is hardly new, right? Like, this is hardly a discussion that's revolutionary. But how can we appreciate, like, how can we have moments of gratitude and appreciation, because we're all so scattered? Like, we can't concentrate on any one thing for more than 5 seconds before we're on to the next. And I will raise my hand and say, I'm trying to figure out how to slow things down, but I don't know how. I don't know that do any of us know how, just because there's so many demands on our time, and so many so many things vying for our attention in this world. Like, technology is the bane of my existence. I don't know about anyone else, but I miss the days of having a wall phone with the old school ring, right? Like, I miss that. if someone wanted to get a hold of you, you needed to be home. Now you go out with individuals, and once again, this isn't new. We see it all the time, but the amount of time that we pay attention to our phones, I think, prevents us from having those moments of appreciation for the things around us, for the people that we're with, because we're so preoccupied. We're so focused on ourselves and what's happening, on our technological devices, that I really am concerned and really do question whether or not we can exist in a place of gratitude and appreciation.
I wanted to create a mock Kickstarter campaign, a comedy Kickstarter campaign a few years ago for like a wall phone, adjustment to transfer your smartphone into a kitchen phone. It was like, the opening line was like, "Do you miss the days when you were only tethered to your phone in the kitchen?" Introducing this, like, and then having like someone get all caught up in one of those really long cords. I don't know if anybody remembers that, when you'd like have to, like, you would try to get the cord as far away from the kitchen as you could, and if you were there, you'd get like caught up in it, And it's just like the prototype version would just be like one of those wall phones with your phone like duct taped to it so you couldn't see the screen, and like I thought that'd be really funny and potentially like really lucrative. So if anyone wants to co-create that video with me, it's not like I have time, but that could be really fun and hilarious. And I did put this quotes from Thich Nhat Hanh, as I do think that's a key part of it. Kyle, I wonder about that too, though. I think the question's super legit.
I was going to
Social-
say that's, oh,
You go ahead, Candace.
that's interesting because it's kind of what I was thinking earlier, and that you brought it back to an actual physical phone kind of solidifies that thought from earlier. And I was thinking, I almost wish I had like on my voicemail what I'm doing all day. So like if you're calling between the hours of 1 and 3, my phone, I'm not doing calls between then because that's my vessel for this. Or if you're calling between the hours of noon and 1, here's what I'm doing. So it's almost like just having that to be like a filter and like setting that boundary. I wish in a perfect world I would have an everyday recording that would like say what I was doing.
You should do that.
Leave
I would
me
feel
alone.
super special. You just be like, "Hi, everybody. It's Tuesday, December 3rd. Today, from 10 to 12, I won't be answering my phone because this is what I'm doing." That would be
I love that.
amazing.
I want that.
Why not? Like, I think you could just do that. Just re-record your greeting. You just can't get all precious about it. Otherwise, you'd spend like a half an hour trying to get the right recording every morning.
Oh, I love it.
I think that's brilliant, Candace.
Yeah, I do too.
Because I have such a hard time focusing, like you were talking about, Kyle. And like I picked up my phone, my wife's phone, to reprogram Instagram because she got a new phone or something, and came upon my Instagram. And of course, there you are, Sean. And it's like, and I'm watching it and I'm thinking, I haven't even done my mind mapping yet. And now I'm like, no, I got to watch it to the end. And then I start scrolling. It's like, stop, somebody stop me, and but my brain, I know enough about the brain to know that it's really pleasurable watching you, Sean, it was really fun, but my brain liked it. But you know what? Get out of my face. All I have to do is push on the screen and put it away.
Well, it's interesting too because I keep a solid planner, because if I were to do it, and one of the guys did a podcast on it, and he goes, the problem is with having your calendar on your computer, if you're trying to plan your week and you're getting emails popping in and you're getting things coming while you're trying to like plan your week, it's not effective. And then all of a sudden you're answering emails and you haven't even done your week plan yet. So just like, yeah, having that vessel that's protected instead of being interrupted while you're trying to conceptualize, like, what do I want my week to look like? How do I want to feel this week? So I think it's important. And I think people are kind of losing it with their Google calendars and notifications, and it's so distracting.
So this is a good place to transition into what we're going to do this week, because otherwise this is a kind of big, does anyone else want to say anything on this? I think this is a good time to just get our free writing. So like we're going to
write about it.
Yeah. So then you can just write what you have to say. I'm tempted to change this a little bit, but so Candace was just talking about like weekly planning and like kind of having a setup of what you're going to do over your week and what you're going to prioritize and what you're going to do. I want to do an exercise that's coming up this week. That is the most challenging one, one of the most challenging ones, or maybe not. Actually, I'll erase that. Whatever. It's called an Odyssey plan. And these are 5-year plans that we're going to sketch out really basically. I want us to think about 3, just like you're kind of planning out a week, not like in all the granular little details, but what am I going to be doing with the bulk of my time in this week? We're thinking about what we're going to be doing as we move forward. This is interesting since we're all in different places. But Bill Burnett and Dave Evans give us 3 different lives we want to think about. So the first life, so you're thinking about 3 different 5-year plans. And these are going to be really loose. So they're not like incredible detail. The exercise is to just get our imagination going. And I should say, Do we value our imagination? Is imagination a valuable thing, a valuable asset? Thumbs up for imagination? Anyone go thumbs down, imagination's lame? Or thumbs sideways, imagination is like, so imagination, if we have a thumbs up imagination, why is imagination thumbs up?
Because it seems magical and explore. Is this, sorry, you're asking for an answer?
Yes, I am actually, thank you. Magical,
Well,
exploratory.
It's,
Wistful even, like,
I heard a woman who did a TED Talk, and I can't remember the context of the talk, but one of the things that she said in it, and I'm paraphrasing, I might get it wrong, but, and this is why I love imagination so much, is the miracle of our minds is that we can imagine being someone else in some other time doing something else. Like that's, to me, that is the biggest miracle of our minds. And I'm going to try to find the exact quote in the talk, but it's one that really obviously stuck with me because I heard it sort of in person probably in 2013 or 14, like a long time ago. But I think that's just the miracle of our mind. Like, I don't know that other animals have that ability to imagine being someone else in another time doing a different thing.
Okay, fantastic. That was way better of a setup than I was making. So you're imagining 3 different future versions of yourself. And we're only going to go for 15 minutes, so these have to be kind of quick in terms of imagining them out. And they identify 3 different ones. So on condition 1, you imagine your future. So 1, I would just say this is like as things are already going. So if you pretty much just imagine the way your life is going to go, continuing unfolding as it is, what's that going to look like? The second one is if what you're doing had to stop. If what's going on now wasn't possible anymore, what would you do? So like and this is funny because, Kyle's like getting ready to leave his job. He's like actually in this situation. So, but this is like if I'm a teacher, all of a sudden Zoom and teaching goes away. No one wants any teaching anymore. What am I going to do then? And then the third one is the most whimsical or fun. What you would do if money, reputation, or status was of no concern. I like interpretive dance, but I'm afraid of doing it because of what it would do to my online reputation. So does everybody kind of get the, and if you want to take this a different way, you can, but you're thinking about the goal. The other way to take this is you could just brainstorm. I think Candace did this last time. You could just brainstorm like 8 different potential futures. Well, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. But the whole goal of this exercise is to imagine distinct life paths that you can take. And then they end up making the move saying that there's probably room to take all of them. So it's not even a matter of we're going to take this somewhere else. But does the prompt make sense? Basically, what we could be doing is where we think we're going, where we would go if where we think we're going is off the table, what we might want to do, and then what we might want to do if reputation, money, any of those things were of no concern. These are called Odyssey plans because each one of them represents like a little odyssey that you might be taking, a journey. And the 5-year time horizon is intentional because it gets us thinking beyond where we are now, but not so beyond that we can't think about it. Cool? 15-minute Odyssey plans. Where 3 distinct lives that we might embark upon in the next 5 years. Okay, that's about 15 minutes. There's a couple of other extensions on here, so definitely finish up what you're writing. But if you can name these 3 different lives, so one of mine is the professor, as like a shorthanded way of referring to them. Bill Burnett and Evans encourage you to do that, so you have a reference point. So before we come back together, if you want to take a little look at what you wrote and come up with a fun 2 to 5 word title of these different scenarios. Okay. The other interesting one here is that, you know what, we're going to save that for next week. So never mind. I'm curious. That's plenty. How did this go? Thumbs up, thumbs medium, thumbs down. I had a thumbs medium for me on this one. Can we hear some things? Responses? Tasha? I can't hear you.
There you go.
I know, I'm
Okay,
having
there we go.
issues here. Yeah, that was a solid medium for me.
What was anything insightful
The
or
first was easy, and I called that the Nemo, like just keep going where I'm at, and
I
that
like
felt
it.
fine to me and nice. And then number 3 is like a fairy tale, because I think that's what it's supposed to be, right? Easy to do that and imagine all the wonderful things. And then 2, I have no idea. I don't even know what my life would look like or what I would want, which I guess is why I'm here. So yeah, 2 was super hard, and I have like 2 lines because I put it in the too hard pile. So
That was the same with me this time. I literally was like, I'll play music, but I was like, well, what you're already doing, you can't do, and I'm like, I don't know.
yeah, it'll be good for me to think of, but it felt too hard for right now.
I ended up getting a server that I would become an Uber driver and work in restaurants as a server because I would need to make money.
Yeah.
I put that I wanted to make lunches for kids.
Come live at my house.
There you go. We're making deals, wheeling and dealing, wheeling and dealing.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I did put that I mean, I do have some aspirations. And I put like, maybe I'd be a designer, maybe and I also just said, I'd find my big girl pants, and, right now I'm just kind of coasting along and seem to be okay with that. And the number 2, I also titled, what the fuck are you going to do here? Like, I have no, I don't know. Scary.
I think this is a really fruitful. What I like about this is that there's a challenging point here that seems like it might be fruitful to keep on thinking about. So what is it? What does it mean to put on big girl pants for you?
I know. I
That's
gotta
it.
figure
And
that out.
honestly, this isn't a question we answer in a day,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe even in 7 weeks. But maybe I think you can get some glints on it. I also put like maybe go back to school and get a PhD, which is legitimately like an interesting option for me
Mm-hmm.
if I had to. So yes, I would lean into those questions even more. Put some
Yes.
like, what does that mean to you? What kind of design? How might you? Yes, because then you're just trying to think of where they take this is what small things could you do that might give you more intelligence on your imagination. To take it out of the world of, oh, I might want to make lunches for kids, to how much, Tasha, would you pay me to come over and make lunch for your kids? And what days of the week? Because if even
Yeah.
honestly, I'll do it for half price, because what I really want out of this exchange is to see whether or not I want to scale this idea. And no offense against your kids, but I might make a decision whether or not I do this based on how this goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you basically,
Come over.
just as an example, you two can keep on talking
Tomorrow
about
is great.
Yeah. Actually, how's right now? No. Yeah. We go from Odyssey plans to
I'm
prototypes.
here for you.
Yeah. I love that. We're going to prototype is the idea that we're
Yeah.
really actually trying to get an idea of what we might do. They
Yeah.
say there's two types of prototypes: experiences and conversations, or other kinds of interactions. So if you're thinking about being a designer and you want to put on your big girl pants around design, which designers can you talk to? Do some of them have clients that they don't want to work with anymore? So I know a lot of freelance designers, that's usually the way that it is. They want to fire some of their clients, and they'd like to be able to fire them and give them to other people. So maybe that's like a way to work with terrible clients to see whether or not. So you're starting to get creative, and that's kind of where we're going in week 5 and week 6. I just want to plant the seed that's like, what kinds of things could you do? Start a newsletter, Samantha. Post 3 of your quote art things to Instagram. Do what little tiny things could you do that would give you insight on, do I really want to get a PhD? Or is this, or no? Leslie's like, thanks, Leslie. I will cross that off.
Sorry, I just had a bad experience with people telling me I needed a PhD when I don't want one.
Yeah.
So
I sat in one class to get an education PhD, and I was so appalled at how terrible the academic. They were all just like, chummy. This will be so easy, and we're gonna make so much money when we're done. I'm like, oh my god, I gotta get out of here. This education program is trash. No offense, but it was. Okay. Other reactions, and thank you, Tasha. I think that was a really fantastic example of what I hope that this exercise is going to do. And this was the first time that I really had a hard time answering number 2, as I was like, fuck, I don't want any of these things to go away. My life is pretty good.
Right.
But good. Okay. Enough talking from me.
Sean, Candace and I were talking about this last night, and one of our challenges, like, I'm never short on ideas about what I want to do, and legitimately think that I could be happy doing a lot of the things. So again, I'm full of like problems today. Like, what do you do with that? Right? I legit have a list of things that I would be really content doing.
You tell me.
The answers are within you. Shut up, Sean.
I'm paying you. Let's get one thing straight. You're the teacher here. I'm the student.
Well, it's like, what should I do first? And like, instead of thinking, yeah, it's like, do I have to pick this forever? Because I feel like that's where my brain goes. Like, if I pick to be a designer, I'm gonna have to die a designer. That's just gonna be my life path. So it's like, what's first? What's for now and forever? Like, and trying to figure out, or maybe just saying, here's all the things I want to do. Let's do this first. And maybe setting a timeline on it. And like Leslie had said before, maybe setting an expiration date and just saying, I'm only going to run this business for 3 years and then on to the next. I don't know. Is that a way of breaking it down?
I'm going to go with another answer about pleasure and joy. And I would ask, which ones are giving you what kinds of pleasure? This kind of connects to Kyle's point as well, that he knows that he really enjoys doing deep work. And yes, surface work has to be a part of it, but it's the deep work where I can deep dive into something that makes me feel so good. So if you, yeah, I love that. We don't know the way that it's going to go from what Leslie put, but I would, if you think of, and still on Jeannie's kind of big question, I have 8 things I want to do. What could they be? Which is going to give you the deepest pleasure, or which has the highest likelihood of giving you the deepest pleasure? So that's one, I would say, which ones give me the most pleasure? And I would, not all pleasures are created equal. If you've ever done narcotics or not, whatever. They might be short-lived. Sugar is a good enough example. You eat some sugar, it feels good for a little bit, and then it doesn't. Right? Other kinds of pleasure. So you're asking which one's pleasure. Then we can do some other ones. Which ones are most feasible? I know that you were thinking about creating a old folks home that is also a preschool. Brilliant idea. How feasible is it? And then the last question you can ask is, which ones will I be the best at? I really want to be an interpretive dancer, but let's be real. I don't have very good groin mobility. You get what I'm saying? It's a terrible joke. But that's how I would honestly get a little rational about it and think about which ones. And then I would leave the rational choice behind and just be like, what am I going to work on? And I do think the other thing I will say, Jeannie, is I think there's a real value in setting you want to put some things into action. You want to get some data back. Otherwise it's just like, fuck, overwhelm. So just
I've started doing some of that, Sean, just like with intention, 3 classes in, like went to visit the farm last time, had a full-blown conversation about the old people, kid, and those plans are the things I want to do are massive.
Yes. I personally love working towards giant, massive things. That makes me feel alive. So like when I was doing the wisdom workshop, me thinking about like rethinking higher education in America, hugely invigorating. That changed into like, well, maybe I'll just start my own little thing instead of actually like change the way people do education in America. Which maybe is a parallel for you. Maybe instead of getting this whole huge center, maybe you're just facilitating these connections or having like doing something that we can't foresee yet based on the connections that you're making. So yeah, I think having those big goals is hugely inspiring and helpful, but for some people it might not be. Other points, questions?
Yeah,
reactions?
I soon will have the luxury of doing this, but Tasha, this is something that is perhaps for you to consider as well in relation to your interest points. I'm just really putting myself out there and offering myself in a pro bono fashion. So nothing has been necessarily materialized yet, but it's been very synchronistic because it could lead to some paid gigs. But what I'm doing is I'm just approaching consulting firms and organizations that lead training and professional development, and I'm just saying, hey, I'm willing to do whatever you need me to do, and I'm willing just to sit in the back of the room and take notes and offer advice and feedback on the session, just because I know that the amount of experience that I have is extensive, but I have no portfolio, right? I have no portfolio of doing what I want to do. So I've got to figure out how to get myself into a scenario where I'm actively delivering trainings and I'm actively developing curriculum so that I can build that portfolio. So that's, Tasha, something to perhaps consider, just approach design firms and saying, hey, willing to be, look at it maybe more as like an apprentice or an internship type of opportunity. I know that, people don't always have the luxury of doing that, but, that's kind of where I am. And also for the month of December, perhaps beyond, but what I am planning on doing is just sending out cold emails or cold calling florists, because I want to arrange flowers this holiday season.
Fucking cool, man. I love that.
And I'm willing to even just deliver, like I'm gonna approach it as like, have me do whatever you need me to do. And, you can pay me less than minimum, and I'm even willing just to deliver flowers, because in my mind, I can't think of anything that would be happier than delivering people a big bouquet of flowers and seeing the smiles on their faces. So that's what I'm gonna try to do a little bit, at least during this holiday season. I'm gonna try.
That's awesome, Kyle. Yeah, my wife, oh gosh, 15 years ago, retired she's also was a therapist. And she's always sort of been, she's really an artist. She's like an empath, intuitive person that, was told to color between the lines. So she had issues about being an artist. And so she has always loved flowers. She's a gardener. Her house looks amazing outside. And so she went and took a class at a floral place. And now she's basically a floral artist, and it's exactly what you said. And she has a knack for intuiting what people are going to want, whether it's a wedding or somebody wants to give something to their boyfriend or whatever. So yeah, for me, this was a pretty significant, like it was if it was, I don't know what, I guess medium high. But it wasn't necessarily, it's a little bit intimidating. So, but I wanted to share a little bit about what I came up with. And this is kind of what's been going on with me throughout the class. So if things stay the same, I'm the singing psychotherapist. So I'm a recording artist, but I'm a therapist for my day job, but actually it's where I get a lot of my meaning. And so I'd looked at ways I could tweak that to make it better or bring in more of the things. And then if I couldn't do that, what I came up with, the reason I couldn't do it was because of my wife's potential health problems, which are starting to show up. And I could end up becoming a caretaker. It was like, and that's been sort of like operating in the back of my mind, like, where am I at this point in my life? And is it like I'm having thoughts like, really at this point, I've got like probably 3 years more that I'm going to do as a therapist. And then, I was always planning on just doing more music or whatever. And, but now I'm like thinking big and like, what else could I do? And aren't I too old to be thinking that? And da, 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 da. And then this sort of maps to that. So I'm wrestling with that. But what I came up with, what else I would do is whatever comes from this year's discovery process of what's really fun for me, I'd follow that to its logical conclusion with, if I couldn't do anything else. And I don't know what that is, if it's not music and it's not. So what would I do if money, reputation was no concern? And I called that one the Balls Out Fun Fest. And so it came to my mind. I didn't edit it. And I'm struck by the fact that I don't know what I do. But I think, I don't know. I mean, I think where I go is I'd write and record and, but for me, everything that comes down to having meaningful conversations, kind of like what you said, Sean. So in a way, and it's hard to let go of my preconceived notions of what I'm supposed to do. But I think my aha this week is that no matter, I could almost do anything if I'm in significant, meaningful conversations that bring value to other people and blow my mind at the same time. So that's kind of, and so it's like, oh, well, gosh, I don't want to have to give up music, or I really like I like my identity as a therapist, but in the end, does any of that really matter? Is it just the central thing? So that's kind of where I'm at.
Reminds me, there's a prompt. Would you rather live in a world without music or without laughter? Someone asked me that when I was full on and like trying to make music a career. And I didn't think about it. I was like, I'd go without music. I could not live without laughter. And I'm like, well, that's really interesting, isn't it? And it just reminded me of, it's almost like music is a vehicle to have those kinds of connections with ourselves and other people at the end of the day. And it's so easy to lose that when you're taking advice on how to promote a record.
I was going to say too,
Yeah.
Paul, I have a question for you, Paul.
Yeah.
Do you ever use music like in your practice, like kind of as medicine? Like, hey, I think this song would really resonate with you. Because I just feel like, I mean, music is definitely medicine for me. And especially if you hear it at the right time, the right song. And I feel like I don't know, the first time we met, you brought up like Nowhere Man. And it just was like, oh man. And I don't know, I think music is medicine. Do you get to do that in your practice at all with people, or?
That's a great question. So I think of songs all the time. I even think of song lyrics, and if it's not mine, then I'll sort of like, have you ever heard da da da? Let me just read this to you. Bear with me, So I definitely do that, which is sort of, nobody's grading me, and people keep coming back, so I guess it's okay. But I definitely want to say a sign like, oh, I wrote this song. You got it. This is like the thing. It's going to hit you right where it counts. I've never done that. And in fact, I don't even think, and yet my songs, the record I put out this year is almost all, it's either stuff that I've gone through or people around me have, or it's stuff that, there are direct quotes from clients, from kids I saw and stuff that were the genesis of a song. So it all comes out of that, and speaks to that human suffering and all that stuff. So I'd love to be able to do that. If I wasn't licensed, I probably could. I don't know. Maybe it'd be okay.
I was wondering what the rules were around that, or if I don't know.
Well, hey, oh, you're depressed? Hey, have you heard my new record? It's like, I don't think so. But
that's kind of what I was imagining is so really funny. But it could be helpful, right?
Yeah, but Sean Waters stuff is, you could listen to that. It's not mine, right?
Yeah, I love that question.
Me too.
Does
I think it's
musical therapy not exist? Because just going from Candace's thread, how sometimes we listen to ASMR, we listen to rainfall, we listen to spa noises, and how calming and healing that is. And Paul's like a songwriter, so it's a case of, is it working with somebody to write a song, to kind of write down their feelings and emotions and letting go, or something along those lines? And I think because you have that gift, and music is so important. And then when we can put our own words to the music or have someone help us, that could also be very healing as well.
Definitely.
Paul, you're muted.
Oh.
Paul, you're muted.
I muted myself instead of unmuting. At the school I just retired from, I was doing that with kids. So
fucking cool.
It was so cool. And so maybe making the songs with people that they're trying to write. Yeah. That's something that
like co-writing our transformation together in the form of a song.
Yeah.
How freaking cool is that? It's like got that community conversation piece.
Yeah. I always have had, until my songwriting partner died, I've always had a songwriting partner for that reason. It was always, I love doing that. So yeah. Thanks for the ideas, guys. And I did think about majoring in music therapy when I was wrestling, when I was shot down as a piano performance major. So.
I was going to go ahead and share my Odyssey plans too, if you guys don't mind.
Candace, can I cut you off really fast just to tie a Paul thing in? And then, because I want to hear all your stuff. Paul also wrote in my notes, can I get, because one of the things I love to do is hang out with smart, funny people. It's like, how can I get paid to hang out with smart, funny people? Like, could that be my job? I don't know.
I
Like,
would-
just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Yes, please. I want that job, Jeannie.
Well, and he just
But
said like having significant conversations with people that also blow his mind at the same time. Like, I want to get paid to do that too. I don't want to have to be a therapist to do it. I just want to hang out with them. I don't know.
I hope
will-
that Sean Waters thinks that's his job. I hope he thinks we're smart and funny.
Honestly, I was going to say something like that's exactly what this is that I wasn't getting in college. Not that my students aren't funny and not that my students aren't smart, but when all of the rewards and frameworks are external and people just don't bring themselves to class. It's like a surprise if a glint of humanity comes in, where this is like human from the whole time. Like everything is like funny and human. And I mean, generally very intelligent. So yes, that is exactly what I think about this, but tragically not what I think about in classroom teaching, even teaching at the college level. Anyway.
Sean, that's it's very interesting that you say that. You know, something that I made part of my narrative in my situation as I'm having, you know, the various interviews with, you know, different offices. The part of that narrative is that, you know, over time in the last 3 years, you know, I have not been able to show up at work as my authentic self. And you have to wonder how often that's the case, right? Where we can't bring our humanity to the office for whatever weird HR reasons. Like, what a travesty that is. Like, how horrible is that we can't bring ourselves into the place where we spend the most time, at least Monday through Friday? And how much human development are we missing out on, right? It sickens me, but that's why I'm moving. Like, that's why I'm doing, you know, why I want to shift gears and perhaps, you know, help turn the tide on helping organizations realize that when we bring ourselves to the office and, you know, authentically, when we bring our humanity to the office, ultimately we're going to have healthier organizations, more productive organizations, more caring organizations. Like, shouldn't we want that? Like, isn't that something that we should strive for? So yeah, yay.
I love that quote, Samantha. Oh my God. It also reminds me of the don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come fully alive. Because what the world needs is people who come fully alive. Howard Thurman quote. Candace.
Yeah, I was gonna say this plan looked a lot different. Odyssey plan writing looked a lot different than the last time I did it. I think last time I was kind of going way more into detail, and this time it became like really clear in a general way for me. So the first one I called, which is if things were going the same, and I called it the giver or the employee, and I tagged it as reactive. So like if I were continuing to live my professional life in a reactive way and just taking the jobs that came to me and saying, of course I can help with that. Yeah, I can help with that. So that one was the giver, and it didn't end well in my 5 years. Basically ended in burnout and an unhealthy lifestyle. So then I said, if I couldn't give to people anymore, like if I wasn't allowed to be reactive, what would my second look like? And then that was the boss. And then that was the receiver. And that one was proactivity. So it's like, if I'm not allowed to serve other people, I just have to be the boss. And that would be, what would that look like in my second plan? And that was kind of like me building my plan backwards or building my life backwards. Like, okay, I want to make this much a year, working this many hours and spending this many hours a week on spiritual, personal, relationship, play. So that would be like taking control of my life and building backwards in a proactive way, which felt really good to me. I was surprised it felt really good to me, my second one. That kind of shocked me. And then the third one was the contributor or the server. And that one was more of an active. So it went from reactive to proactive to active. And that really just looked like me saying yes to life, and changing the definition of accomplishment and success. So
Awesome.
like one of them was like, well, saying yes to life when it shows up and not caring where it's going to take me because I don't care what people think about where it takes me. So, for instance, falling in love with a cowboy in the mountains, I get to just go do that and then make money how I need to, which would be serving or cleaning or whatever things that I love. And I love bartending. I love cleaning. I love organizing and helping people. So that was really interesting. My third one was very fluid and like becoming more of a creative and an active human instead of a proactive or reactive human. So they were all really different, but I don't know, this felt really concise and really clear for me this time around, which was great.
I loved how you kind of went archetype, like there's different flavors of each one, which I haven't seen before. That seems like a really creative one. It also connected me when you said that when you changing the definition of accomplishment and success as a way of just saying yes to life as it is. I really find that really compelling and liberating in a lot of ways, especially in our culture when we usually define ourselves with our titles. If I can actually be like a barista and have a great and do a really good job at it because I'm really enjoying it. And it does just connect to that. I wonder about ways to bring more play into work. I also kept on thinking of that definition of retirement, that as soon as you're doing what you would do if you weren't, if you can do what you would do, like I'm no longer living for tomorrow. I'm doing what I want to do today. Is this what I want to do? If I was retired, I would probably seek some kind of a involvement with the school because I'd want to be in a classroom. So that's like, I think that's a really interesting other point of this, of really leaning into doing things that you could do for their own sake rather than to just do something else. For me, Leslie put in the chat above that there's these, we can think about what to do with these plans. We can see how much resources we have. It's going to take a lot of money to execute and we don't have it. That's not going to be as helpful. How much we like it, how much confidence we have that we can pull it off, and how coherent it is with our lives. I added like education or growth level to that. How much am I going to grow in this? I might not like cleaning toilets for a year, but I bet I could grow doing that. Or vice versa. I'm not going to grow cleaning toilets. And it's just interesting how we frame these experiences, which I think is really powerful. Yes, thank you, Candace. Awesome. And Samantha, the whole accomplishments versus aspirations is so good.
Yeah, I was just thinking about aspiration because I was looking at the meaning of it. And it's crazy how the medical meaning is when something enters your airway or lungs by accident, it can cause health problems. But when we aspiration, the other meaning that is a strong desire to achieve something. So it's
That's
kind of
so
like,
cool.
how are those two things even really linked? And then I started thinking about the Beyonce song where it's like Pretty Hurts, when they ask her, like, what's your aspiration in life? And she said her aspiration, she was like a beauty contestant, her aspiration in life would be to be happy, which means that right now she was suffocating. So I've never really linked the whole how that word can mean two different things.
I haven't either. I really like the inspiration, respiration. I haven't thought about aspiration works in there. Okay.
Something you just said again, Sean, that somebody else said earlier has me thinking, and we don't have to talk about it now, but I don't know whether it's a dialectic or a toggling or something, but accepting what is, accepting my life as it is, and and what I have and haven't accomplished, and coming to peace with that, and then is somehow connected to being open to what's coming next and to being open-handed about that. And, yeah. So I don't know what more to say about that, but.
Pretty rad.
I'll be sad that I was really surprised how different mine are, considering it's only been since September, right, that we did this the first time. So I'm glad. I think I've learned some things while I've been chatting with you all and reading and writing, but yeah.
I'm glad that you said that too. Both of these. It's so interesting how this changes. And I think there's some humility there, or an open that we maybe don't know. I don't know that's me making meaning of it. But it does seem like things change pretty quickly. 7 weeks seem like, maybe 7 weeks just aren't that much time, but a lot happens and a lot can happen in 7 weeks. Really cool. Okay, so does anybody want to say something that they want to do before we meet next time? Are we going to create or generate some experiences? Are we going to pay attention to more? Basically, all of the prompts are on thinking about designing, or we're kind of getting into how we can design educational experiences for ourselves, or design a certain way, a certain approach, or design certain kind of conversations. So this week is about planning, which is connected to this idea of designing. And I really, you'll see in the prompts, but like, plans are worthless, but planning is priceless. So we don't know how things are going to unfold, but beginning to imagine the ways they could unfold and beginning to take concrete steps in those different directions is a key aspect of education that I don't think we learn in school. So we're kind of getting to one of the big offers that I hope this course is going to give you all, and it gives me over and over again, is that we have some creativity about what we're going to learn based on what kind of environments we go in, what kind of conversations we have, how we might design certain experiences for ourselves to play with. That can be doing the same shit we've always done, but a little differently.
I really like the idea of the prototype, Sean, and thinking of it more as a project.
Yes.
And so, especially going back to what me and Jeannie were talking about, and me saying building backwards in a more proactive way. Like, what if we just were playful with it? And so, if I did do the farm and then just write a list backwards of what would this little small steps be, and then the bigger ones toward the, one of the small steps being visit one, and then one of the bigger ones being looking into the floodplains and looking at properties and actually finding an agent and starting to shop for investors. And so if we just take all those ideas that we have of what we could be doing and then build them backwards in a prototype way with all those little steps as a project, I feel like then synchronicities might show up and opportunities might show up that lead us in a certain direction. I don't know. I think that this just seems fun to me, like a fun project to break it down and be more playful with it so that it's not so overwhelming, because it's overwhelming.
I'm really glad you said that. And I mean, it is a key definition of a good life is that you're actively engaged in projects of worth or processes of worth. So you have something that you're working towards and you're just actively engaged in it. And you're also, if you can break it down into small things, you don't need to get it right. So you can take that pressure off and just be more playful with it, which I think is super successful. That's super, successful. Like, effective. It works more to just be looser with it, to get over the perfectionism, which is kind of that's the challenge of this week. So I hope that we can say, I mean, for this next week, I want to have more conversations with people. I'm going to try to really actually get better at my collaborative work and think. I want to lean into CEO of an educational enterprise more, which is my second one. And I'm going to have conversations around that. Anyone else want to say some concrete thing that we're going to do before we meet next week?
This isn't particularly playful, although maybe it could be. But I have a new digital recording workstation I need to download that I was having trouble downloading, and I hate learning something new, but I have a track I need to create. One of my daughter's friends won the contest when I did a Spotify pre-save thing anyway, and I said I'd record a song, and this is a young woman that goes out and dances to industrial stuff. So I've decided to create a dance track, which is not where I live musically. And so, like techno or whatever. Yeah, exactly. And so, it's like, and I've been avoiding it. So my goal, I just came to me when you were talking, is to have fun with that, do it, and be playful with it and see what I can learn. That was look at it as an educational opportunity rather than a dreaded outcome that I don't feel like I can climb.
Great one. Anyone else?
I'm gonna pick up the phone and call the mortgage person and a real estate person this week.
I like how specific you are. Pick up the phone. Anyone else? 3 minutes.
I'm going to do something really simple, and that's just try to really be present, live in the moment, and get as much as I can out of these next, 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, it's going to go fast.
I'm going to be proactive and actually plan my week before it's happening to me. And I think I'm going to write a text message of what I'm doing each day with my schedule that I can just send as an automatic response. You know how when people are driving, it's like, I'm driving right now, I'm not answering, or even you get a text back. So I'm just going to text people back, this is my schedule for the day. And then they can just find room to call me when I'm free. That's
Love it.
Pressing the snooze button. No, do not disturb, actually, but not the snooze one.
Just tell people when I'm sleeping. Oh, I'll be sleeping then. Don't call me.
Yeah. I think for me, it's not having a plan B for the things that I plan for. I'm going to look at it up as what happens if it goes well, if it's a success, and then bringing in Candace, what would it feel like? Because I think sometimes I tend to look at what will it look like, because it's associated with what people will see, but I need to know what it would feel like for me, and even just go through the senses, smell like, taste like, and be like, and I think that would give me a better picture.
I love that. Very great. Kyle? You're muted.
I'm going to celebrate at the end of this week. So if anyone wants to come down to Denver, Samantha, if you want to fly on over. Ooh, and I'm also going to put up a Christmas tree. I've decided I want to do that this weekend, and all of my holiday stuff in the tree. Anyway, I mean my lights. But this is already in the works, and I'm going to do it because there's no reason not to squeeze in the time that I need as I close out my current position, but just really create a scaffolding for that civility in the workplace training and expanded offering this week. I want to have that done.
Great.
I'll be in Denver Friday afternoon.
Okay.
Let's talk.
Okay. We can go dancing.
Were you ready for that, Kyle? You see, success happens unexpectedly. It's like, are you kind of like accepting it? Because maybe it's not. That's the thing. Are we ready for success? I don't think Kyle was expecting, oh, I'll be in Denver. Like, oh, I wasn't expecting anybody to come rather than I'm expecting somebody to come. It's just a different mindset.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks. I gotta jump. We missed you, Kai. Thanks, everybody. See you, Paul. You might want to watch the beginning of the call. I don't know if you. Really do.
Yeah, I might.
Okay.
Some interesting things, huh?
Yeah. Okay. We'll see you all. I'll send an email, and thanks, everybody. This is a really great.